Good morning, Razor.
The other night was special, and you've had a fantastic week, but how important now that you just park all thoughts of Wembley and the cup final and focus again on the league starting with West Ham?
Yeah, I think not so difficult for me, to be honest, because my character is I'd like to think very stable. So immediately I was thinking about West Ham and how we act to certain things that happened, Bruno's red card, for example. But I think it's slightly more difficult for the players. They'd have run on a lot of emotion on Tuesday, and I think sometimes it's very difficult to sleep after a game, so a late night and all those things that are factors into then how you feel the next few days. So certainly we've tried to refocus the players and tried to get their minds very much back on the now. And West Ham's a very difficult game, so if we're off it in any way, it'll be even harder. So there's been a big push from me and the staff to make sure we're ready for this game.
You mentioned Bruno there. How much are you going to miss him over the next 3 weeks?
Yeah, we're going to miss him massively. I think he's a huge player. He's done ever so well for us. Whenever you lose one player, you have to readjust. There'll be an opportunity now for the team to regroup and find another way. But certainly the timing of it's really difficult. You know, we had a really intense period of games, and now we don't. And Bruno seems to miss a long period of time away. So, but yeah, the good thing for Bruno is he'll be available for the final. But we have 3 huge Premier League games that he'll miss.
And you talked about West Ham there being difficult opponents for you. They are at the other end of the table after a couple of years where they've been competing at the top end and getting into Europe. Are you surprised that they've struggled as much as they have this season?
Well, I think it's the strength of the Premier League. I think it can happen to anyone at any time. It's just such a difficult division that you can go a couple of games, make a difficult start, and then once you're in that position, it's very difficult to immediately get out of it. I think they've got a top quality squad. I think they've got some really, really good players. I think they recruited well in the summer. And I think David's an incredible manager. I mean, his experience, the teams that he's managed, so he's the perfect man for West Ham, in my opinion, in this moment. So that's why every Premier League game is so elite, it's so hard. And yeah, so that's why we're going to have to be at our best this week.
Alexander Isak was taken off the other night with a head injury. How is he, and will he be available for this weekend?
Yeah, so Alex actually made a vital contribution in that moment. So James Ward-Prowse's free kick, we'd naturally discussed those situations a lot in the build-up to both games. Knowing how good he is, he was able to jump and block the free kick, but took a blow to the side of the head. So yeah, he had very slight signs of concussion. So we followed all the protocols. Whether he'll be available or not, I'm not sure.
Okay. Your 2 new signings have trained with you. We've seen Anthony Gordon and Harrison Ashby. Will they be available to go into the squad?
I think both players will be available, yes. They've trained well, so they did a couple of individual sessions around the game because they weren't eligible to play. They trained with the group yesterday, although it was a small group, so they haven't actually trained fully with the team, but I think both are fit and fine.
And lastly, you've spoken quite a bit about Anthony Gordon, why you wanted him and what he'll bring. What about Harrison Ashby? What made you go for him initially in the summer and then follow that up by doing the deal in the January window?
Yeah, so we think he's a player that has huge potential, athletically very good. He naturally, I think, needs time here to progress and to develop. He's got the ideal mentor in Kieran who will help him. We wanted to bring in more strength on that side of the pitch in that position, and with Javier Manquillo injured, it made perfect sense.
Eddie, how do you cope in midfield with obviously John Joe Shelby being away, Bruno being suspended? You're looking very light in there. How do you cope moving forward ahead of the final?
Yeah, well, we have Elliot Anderson, who we really, really like, and we'd love to see how he develops his Premier League career. And we have other players who we feel can play in midfield as well. So yes, we'll obviously like when you miss Bruno's presence and his quality, but we have to adjust as a team, and we will do.
Can I ask what you made of Chelsea's spending in January, one of the rival clubs in the league, a record for a winter window, just under £300 million as a manager of a rival club? How do you view that?
I think it's always difficult to comment on other teams' business. I think it's very, very. Every club is very individual. So how can I give an opinion not knowing what Chelsea's brief is, what their objective is? So look, we've seen it along with everybody else, and all I can say is I think they've brought some very, very good players into the Premier League, and I think they'll do very well, and it'll be very interesting to see how the team gels.
I know obviously you've been backed here at Newcastle, but how difficult is that to compete with that level of spending?
I've never, ever in my position, even when I was under a transfer embargo at Bournemouth for a season, used finances, the ability to bring players in as an excuse or as a reason why we're not winning. So, as I say, every club's so different. We do things our way here. I'm really pleased with the squad we have.
Thanks.
Andy?
Morning, Eddie. I didn't know if you were aware, but it's the 600th game of your managerial career tomorrow night. At a relatively young age as well. How do you reflect on it as a whole?
Yeah, it doesn't seem like 600. It seems like a lot more, to be honest. The toll of management. No, it's gone very quickly, and I think if I was to sit out of management for a bit and not be in a job, I'd look back and go, it was an amazing time. When you're in it, you're just feeling the stresses and strains of every day. But no, I wouldn't change anything in my career to this point. I think it's all happened for a reason, and I'm now in this position. And yeah, I've really enjoyed the challenges that I've had.
You've had some good moments. Where does Tuesday night rank amongst them? And did you allow any moment of brief celebration with the family when you got home?
When I got home, I think it was about 1 o'clock, and they were all asleep. So it was only my dog that was awake, and he didn't greet me that well either. So, no, to be honest, I didn't. I didn't allow myself anything because, well, I was tired and I wanted to go to sleep, and I was thinking about West Ham as I drifted off.
You touched upon it with Reza, but the whole city's obviously a buzz with excitement at the moment. I mean, even in Morrison's the other day, the staff are asking people if they're going to Wembley. How do you, in the lead up to the League Cup final, harness this balance between this jubilance, this elation in the city, and of course the need to keep the players on track and looking at the Premier League?
Yeah, I think I'm blessed with the fact that the group itself is very committed to what we're doing, and I think they know that we can't just switch off and think of the final with 3 huge games in between. So I think the beauty of quite an experienced group is that they've seen it before. It may be in different ways, not necessarily in this type of cup final, but they've been through similar experiences. They know the quality of the Premier League, and they know if we drop our levels we get punished. So I think there's that immediate thought that we want to continue our good league form. We want the crowd to embrace the positivity of what happened and keep that excitement for the cup final, but hopefully expressing itself in our league games as well.
Callum Wilson's now gone no goals in 11. Is he at his best when people doubt him?
I think there's an element where your big players are always have that side of their character. I think Callum's always had that. People have, throughout his career, I'm sure, at times doubted certain situations that he's been in, especially with the injuries that he's had. Is he going to be able to come back and be the same player? And every time I think he's answered them with a very resounding response. Now, Callum thrives on the big moment. I think he thrives on pressure. He's always lived in that persona really well. The main thing for me is as long as he's delivering for the team, then I'll back and support him. So is he committing to what I'm asking him to do in all areas, that's in and out of possession? Is the team functioning well? And to this point it has been, but knowing him, he will want goals.
Just on Anthony Gordon, he looked in awe at the atmosphere on Tuesday night in particular. Is he the sort of player, the sort of character that's perfect for the sort of white-hot atmosphere that St James's Park can produce, as we can expect tomorrow night?
Well, I think he's experienced that in his career. I mean, Everton, certainly from our experience of going there at the back end of last season, was a brilliant atmosphere, red hot. And he's thrived in that environment there. I think he will thrive in this environment here with the positivity and the brilliant response. I didn't hear it. I was busy doing my team talk, but that I heard about afterwards, the brilliant reception our supporters gave him, and he's going to need that after a difficult last few months for him. So for him to feel good again and a release of pressure, I think will be really, really positive for us.
Just finally from me, I heard a Newcastle fan on national radio the other day saying they're expecting their first child on the day of the League Cup final. If Newcastle win, he says that they're going to call her Edie. What are your thoughts on that level of adoration?
Oh dear, that's a good one. Well, that's amazing. I just hope everything goes well with the birth, and yeah, that's an amazing story.
Thanks, Eddie.
Nisha?
Morning, Eddie. You talked about, obviously, you've got to readjust the team losing Bruno. Are you happy with those players that haven't been starting, or maybe the ones that have come into the club? Are you happy that they're ready to step onto that pitch from the whistle and give you what you need?
Yeah, I think there's always a difficult feeling when you're a player, because you can wait and wait and wait, and you get impatient. I think the key thing is, in that period where you're waiting for your opportunity, is that you're professional. Because if you're really diligent with your training, you're really focused on when that chance comes, you'll perform at a very, very high level, and then hopefully you won't come out of the team again. It's about not getting impatient and keeping your focus on what you need to do. And I have to say, from the training sessions that we've had and keeping a very close eye on everybody, the players that haven't been playing, have maintained a very high standard of professionalism and performance in their training.
And Alan Saint-Maximin's a player that kind of started towards the beginning of the season, is now making his impact off the bench. How has he kind of responded to that? I know with having that injury in the middle.
Alan's been very good. He's understood, I think, the difficult situation that I've sort of found myself in, where I've kept a very consistent team because the team's performed at a very high level and results have been, in the main, very good. I think he's understood, but he's also been very keen to show his talent and his worth from the off. So this is potentially, with Bruno's suspension, an opportunity for Alan amongst other players. But I back his quality. I love him as a footballer and as a person. And yeah, he's a huge player for us, and he's going to be massive between now and the end of the season.
In football, it's a funny game. You can have the high of getting to a final and then have the dilemma that you're going to have picking the team with losing Bruno. Do you like that problem-solving, that unpredictable challenge that you'll get week in, week out?
Well, I think there's one thing that is for certain: when you're in my shoes, it's never dull. So you always have snap decisions to make. Sometimes in the middle of a game, you'll have a little bit more time in between games to make your decisions and try and get them right. But you're certainly pulled and pushed around in different ways before making that final call. And I'll always try and make the right decision, what I think is right for the team.
Sorry, just one more. Have the owner's spoken to you after the game on Tuesday?
I had a very brief conversation with Amanda and Murdad immediately sort of after the final whistle. I've had messages from a lot of people connected with the club, so yeah, I've had good communication with them.
Thanks, Damien.
Eddie, you're obviously well aware of the excitement in the city. You brought your family up here in the summer. Have your boys been caught up by it all?
They had a very late night on Tuesday, by all accounts. I think they were very excited, which is great to see. They're Newcastle supporters. Take away their relationship with me, they just want the team to do well. So yeah, they'll be excited for Wembley, and I've just gone to a vision of my youngest son, who calls Wembley Wombly. So he can't quite get the well, I can't even get my pronunciation right. So, but that's a nice moment, and yeah, they look forward to the game.
When you talked about the players, you not having a problem with keeping the players' feet on the ground. Is that going to be more difficult at home?
No, they're focused on their own training. So they got training again tonight, and no, they're great lads, and they understand the job that I'm in. So, you know, they're thinking of West Ham as well.
Scott?
Just on the back of Nisha, really, on Alan. I mean, he hasn't started a game since August, which last season would have been unthinkable, really. And I know there's been injuries and illness kind of along that, but obviously Anthony is in now as well, who can play in a wide attacking position. I mean, how big is this second half of the season going to be for Alan? Because I imagine he is champing at the bit to get a chance and show what he can do.
Yeah, it's going to be huge for him personally, and huge for us that we get him in the best possible place to play. I have to say, physically, I think he's in a good place now. Probably the best he's been since his injury. You know, it was a difficult injury for him because he didn't just injure his hamstring once; he injured it twice, and so that really did delay his comeback. I do think he's looked really good from the bench in recent weeks, and I think that has hopefully helped his confidence levels now potentially play a different role for us. Yeah. But I think there's competition for places, and that's what we really need in every position, because you know that one bad game or a couple of bad games can leave you out the team, and now someone else gets an opportunity to take your place, and hopefully that'll help us in what will be a congested second half of the season.
How much of a balance with Alan is it that obviously when you've got Joe Linton and Miguel in those wide attacking positions, they do an awful lot for you in terms of tracking back, closing down. The game away at Southampton, for example, the tone of that game really was set by the way they were herring about in the first 10 minutes. Alan, with the greatest will in the world, is a different type of player. How do you balance that? Do you need him to do a bit more of that, or do you accept that if he's in your team, he's probably playing a different role?
I think you have to accept players for their strengths, and there'll be no better player at doing what Alan does well in the league, in my opinion. So you can never force a player to perform like someone else. Alan is unique, but we just need to make sure we see his strengths, and that comes down to the team giving him the ball in the right areas, and then obviously Alan executing what he needs to do. Yes, our wide men do work extremely hard, and that's contributed, no doubt, to our really good defensive record. Not just our wide men, but our midfielders as well. But the team needs to function well to win. It's never just down to one player.
Craig?
Morning, Eddie. You went into this window with 5 midfielders. You probably wanted to leave it with 6. You've actually left it with 4. What do you think about A, my mathematics, and B, the situation you've been left with in midfield?
Well, I trust your mathematics. I won't question them. I think the midfield area has been, losing John Joe's been a concern for us. Obviously, we've had a lot of discussions internally. We were active in the market. We didn't manage to get a midfielder over the line. But in some senses, that gives an opportunity for other players. I mentioned Elliot Anderson because we really believe in him, and this could be a moment in his career that we see the very best of him, a local lad who gets a chance in the team. There are other players that can play in that position. So, yes, Bruno's suspension probably came at the worst time for us, in the worst position possible, but sometimes these things happen.
On the subject of midfield, a player you looked at a lot in the summer, we believe, who's coming to St James's on Saturday, Lucas Paqueta. Just give us an insight into how close you maybe came to bringing him in here. Obviously, the relationship with Bruno, was that ever close? I know you looked.
No, I don't think it was ever close, but I certainly admire the player greatly, and there's loads of different reasons for that, transfer fees, etc. But he's an outstanding talent. He plays in a number of positions. So I really like the player, and technically he gives West Ham something totally different in the middle of the pitch or wherever they decide to play him. So we're certainly prepared to have a tough game against him, and Rice in midfield. They're excellent players.
One last one. What was your conversation with Idris Elba like on Tuesday night? What did you say?
Well, it was very short and sweet because Lee took me off for another interview, so I didn't get a chance to pick his brains on his acting career, but it was certainly great to meet him.
Thanks, Craig. Luke?
Is this a test of the collective mentality of everybody to stay focused on the league with that cup final? Because it's a new experience for a whole generation of supporters. It's a new experience for most of the players in your squad.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think we have as I said, for me, it's not a difficult task to focus on the next game because that's the world that I live in. But for the players who live the emotions maybe more than I do of the ups and downs of the actual game itself, we have to come crashing back and now focus on our preparation for another tough game. And it's the type of game that if we do drop our focus in whatever way that manifests itself in, could be a set play, it could be, it's the details that win football matches, and we need to make sure that we're concentrated on those details at all times.
And I presume you'll be watching your players quite closely because big clubs reach cup finals, big clubs still carry on in the league, big clubs aspire to reach new cup finals, and that's where Newcastle want to be, isn't it, moving forward?
Yeah, it is, and I think you've put that really well. So pleasure, but I think it's that not getting carried away with, that achievement in itself. It's going, well, that was our expectation of ourselves pre-game anyway. We've hit that expectation, and now we just move on to a different competition that we want to excel in. I think the extreme emotions never serve you that well.
Thank you.
Okay, Ian?
Hi, Eddie. Eddie, very, very similar to Luke's question there, but with the best will in the world, players want to play in a cup final. Are you worried that you might see people sort of not putting out of challenges, but playing safety first football to ensure that they're fit, and how do you guard against that?
Yeah, that's something I could never, as a player myself, ever take myself to. I wasn't good enough to take myself into that place where you're not committed to what you're doing in that moment. I don't think we'll have that issue with our players. That's what I say sitting here now. The reality might look different, and if that does look different, then I'd obviously have to speak to the individuals concerned. But I think we're very committed, I hope, into every moment of every game, because Premier League points is an absolute huge importance to us.
And in recent weeks, Eddie, you've been very consistent in your selection. I think unchanged sides. Are there places up for grabs at Wembley in February?
Well, there's always places up for grabs. There's places up for grabs even when I'm picking a consistent team. I'm always trying to pick my best team, and players can always change that by what I see on a day-to-day basis. Now, with Bruno's suspension, there'll be a rejigging of the team. There'll be changes made, and that's an opportunity for someone to not come out the team again, whoever that person is. And then potentially there's other situations that can change. So there's definitely places up for grabs. We have a strong squad, as I said. There's attacking options there for me. So no one's place is guaranteed.
So the likes of St. Max and even maybe Elliot Anderson can hold out realistic hopes that they could be walking out the tunnel in the starting lineup.
I'd say the same to every player in my squad. Every player needs to have that vision of them walking out Wembley, and what's going to give them the best chance of doing that is to train well and play well.
Jordan?
Where's my target at in terms of this recovery? I've seen you spotted and doing some running on the grasses this week.
Yeah, that's exactly where he is. He's running. He's early stages of ball work out on the grass, which is a great thing for us to see. He's a huge player.
And just on having on key as well, what is his injury?
He just got a ball on the end of his foot, which just twisted his knee slightly. So it's a strange mechanism, but he's been away in Spain. I think he's had a couple of injections. I think he's back here tomorrow, and we hope from there we can build him up quite quickly.
I've seen the Premier League had confirmed the 25-man squad and had Emil Kraft, and I just wondered if there was a potential chance that he could be back before the end of the season. Obviously, I know it's a difficult injury.
Yeah, I think there's a very, very slim chance. I wouldn't hold out, too much hope in seeing him before the end of the season, but you never know.
Just
okay, Kieran?
Eddie, Chris Wood was back at St James's the other night. Did he also get a chance to speak to the group one last time?
Yeah, he was back, and it was great to see Chris. I saw him at length after the game. He came into my office, which was a really nice moment to share with him, because I hadn't seen him since he left. I'd spoke with him obviously, but I think he went into the change room to see the players, and both him and John Joe had a really good moment with the group. And I think it just goes to show how popular they were, how integral they were to the squad, and how much they're going to be missed by everybody.
Obviously, one window's just closed, but the way the club works so far in advance, do you already know what you want this summer?
I think we would have an idea, but that changes, and that can change in the blink of an eye. So I think if you plan things right, you can look a few months ahead, but you always need to be reactive to what happens on a day-to-day basis as well.
Okay, Miles?
Is Elliot Anderson ready to start a Premier League game, and can you see him starting games in Bruno's absence?
I think he's ready to start from a physical perspective, for sure, yeah. I mean, he's had a few niggles. I think he's had calf problems, a thigh problem, but these were sort of 1 or 2 day injuries that set back his rhythm of training. So I don't think he's had a really fluid period, but I think now in training we begin to see the very best of him again, similar to what we saw in pre-season. So I think from a physical perspective he's looked stronger. I think mentally Elliot is very strong as well. I think he's very focused, very driven, wants to do extra every day to try and get to be the best player that he can be. And yeah, I think he's in a place where he could start games. Whether he will or not, that's going to come down to him.
And in terms of Isak, how's he been this week, and what do the concussion protocols mean for his particular case? Well,
he's been around, and he's looked fine. I don't think he's got any ill effects. I don't think he had any ill effects the next day. And every day he's felt better, and yeah, he's fine. So there's no problems.
Okay, Lee?
Eddie, with Anderson, has he knocked on your door, or with all your managerial experience, do you make sure it doesn't get to that point of the player?
No, he hasn't knocked on my door, but we do have regular meetings with him. I think it's important you communicate with your players, and just keep updated with his life really and what he's doing, how he's feeling. As I said, he's had a few physical problems which has knocked him around December time, I think, and January. They were difficult months for him, but I think he's through that now and he's looking a lot happier within himself. So as I said, he's always working at his game, different elements of his game to try and make himself better.
And obviously you could have loaned him out in the summer, and by now you could have the games under his belt. But I think you've always had in your head that there's going to be a period in the season where he gets thrown into it, and it feels like this could be it.
Yeah, I definitely feel that, and I hope from the transfer window that he feels closer to playing, because he certainly is. I hope he feels that the strength that we have within him. We really believe in him. I think he's got very, very good attributes. Like all players, I think he'd need a run in the team to really show his qualities. But he can certainly play.
And Sean Longstaff, brilliant that he got the 2 goals the other night. Before that, he was searching for that goal. We could all feel his frustration, perhaps shooting from far out. But the fact he's got in the box and got a couple now, is that something you've been working with him on?
I think it's something we've been working on with players in that position. We need our attacking midfielders to score and to create and to get good numbers of productivity. Sean, I think's all-round game has been, I've said every week here, I think at a really, really high level. I'm just pleased he's got the goals that sort of confirms that for everybody else. There were 2 really good finishes. He timed his runs really well into the box. Really pleased for him, and on a personal level, I didn't realise it was so long since he'd scored at St James's Park. So a great moment for him and his family.
Yeah, there was a couple of stories in the transfer, and I won't sort of pin names on you, but some of them were to what we're now calling rival clubs. Is that going to be a problem for you going forward, trying to get other Premier League players in, because they see Newcastle such a threat now?
That's your words, not mine. But yeah, I think you're on the right lines. I think it is potentially difficult for us. Depends on the player, depends on the club, but I think it. We're probably aware that we're seen differently this season than we were last season.
And just finally on Jay Turner-Cook went out on loan to Tranmere. I guess you'll be looking something similar to what young Anderson did last year.
Yeah, really good opportunity for Jay. I think he's gone to a really good club, a really good manager, and we hope that it's a spell where he really learns and develops. And takes everything from a loan spell that you can, whether it's good or bad. The experience will benefit his career.
Martin?
Sorry, I need to go on with Lee's question. Did he feel that in the window that there were certain clubs weren't particularly keen to deal with Newcastle because of see them as a threat now?
Well, I think just sort of answered that. I think we're viewed differently, probably by some clubs now, and that's something that we'll have to adjust to.
And in terms of the back 5, do you coach them separately, and were they gutted to have conceded a goal on Tuesday night?
We do coaching with the units of the team. So whether that's the back 4, midfield 5, front 3. So we're always trying to get detail into our work. I'm sure they'd have been disappointed to concede. I think it was probably from our own making how we did concede, and also you have to credit Che Adams for an incredible finish.
Could you have imagined how well the back 4 gelled together?
I don't think you can ever imagine it. You hope, but yeah, because when you're building a team during pre-season, you're not 100% sure on what the starting 11 is going to look like. So you're juggling a few ideas. But to see that back 4 play as it has, as consistently well as it has been a great thing to see, and I think it's given the rest of the team a lot of confidence.
And finally, just to come back to Callum Wilson as well, does he have the mental strength, I guess, to come through a run of games like this without scoring?
Yeah, without a doubt in my mind. Knowing him for a long period of time, Callum's got huge reserves of mental strength. It's probably his biggest strength, and I back the player totally.
Okay, Jacob?
Just wanted to ask quickly about Nick Pope. He's now finally conceded after many months. Is this the same Nick Pope that you saw at Burnley when you were scouting him to bring him in, or has he developed in the last 6 months, and if so, what areas?
I'd say no. It's a very similar Nick Pope. I think his shot stopping has been of a very high level, and I said from day one, I think we did a couple of training sessions in his first couple of days, and he made some saves. All the players stopped. I'm like, wow, it's incredible moments when you see a goalkeeper athletically, well, as big as him, but as athletically agile as him, make the saves that he does. So I think he made a very good initial impression with the players and with the coaching staff, and that hasn't really changed. I think he molds slightly to our style of play and what we ask him to do, but I think that's just natural over time. But he's very much the same goalkeeper in terms of his shot stopping.
And the knock on him internationally, perhaps unfairly, has kind of been this idea that he's maybe not as good as some people he's competing with his feet. Is that ever something you've been concerned about with him, or something you've worked on with him?
We work on all areas of his game, whether that's shot stopping, distribution, yeah. So we will cover all aspects of his game. I'd say for us, I feel he's distributed the ball really, really well. I've got no issues with that. He's trusted the centre halves with the ball. He's been a pivotal part of our build-up play. So no, I think all aspects of his game have been very strong this year.
Finally, at the end of the Southampton game, you brought Jacob Murphy off, and unusually for a sub who's being subbed off, he was kind of smiling, clapping. That's unusual, and yeah, if you could maybe just sort of talk about that moment and what Jacob kind of brings to the squad, even if he's not playing as much as he might want to be.
I think Jacob understood. We just had a man sent off. We'd changed to 5 in midfield. 5 at the back and 3 in midfield, and he's a winger, so we didn't really need a winger in that moment. So I think his level in intelligence, he understood why I was making the change. But still, even with that understanding, as you say, his reaction was that of someone who was a pure team player and a really positive guy. He's been a great influence behind the scenes for all the players this season, and can't compliment him enough on that.
One quick one, Luke.
Yes, so I should have asked this earlier. Kieran Trippier is the one player in the squad who has experienced this before. How important has he been to you and the group as a captain, and how important is he going to be over the next few weeks?
Yeah, he's been very important. I think he brings that level of calm, and as you say, because he's been there, he's seen it, he's done it. He has that level of authority to, when he speaks, everyone goes, okay, Kieran's been there before, he knows what to do. I think when you have someone like that in your dressing room, it's so powerful. And that's one of the reasons, he just run the league in Spain, and we had a chance to recruit him. We didn't hesitate, and he's been, as I've said many times, on and off the pitch in various different roles. First when he was injured and using his experience to help the lads in a relegation battle, to now when we're experiencing cup finals and success. He has a way of just managing the situation and helping the players deal with it.